I'm Caryn McTighe Senior Scholar and Director of Civic Learning and Democracy Initiatives at the Association of American Colleges and Universities. McTighe, I had the absolutely intimidating fortune to inherit the office of the Program on the Status and Education of Women after Bunny. She had been gone for a year, but I then took up the mantle that, as so many have said, she put down these building blocks. But I want to say something about what it meant to me before, as so many of you said, you ever knew Bunny Sandler. I had just come to LaSalle University in Philadelphia that had just gone co-ed. The same year, Bunny was invited by a far-sighted president of AAC&U, President Ness, to come in and help AAC&U, or AAC at that time, advise its members about sex equity. So she came there in '71, and I end up at a school that had just admitted women. There were 9 women on the faculty. By 1972, when Title IX was passed, I taught my first women's studies course. And by 1973, when she is beginning to establish and work with others like Sue and other people to find Title IX coordinators, the university appointed me a coordinator, which sounds like something glorious, except they were appointing someone who was an instructor, untenured, unpaid, relative. But it was eye-opening. I think the way the legislation was passed, that actually meant you had to prove to an institute, you had to prove you were not discriminating. It was a very different take. You didn't have to prove that you had been discriminated, but as the institution that you hadn't discriminated. And the first thing I thought, again, reminding me of our narrow view of our worlds and the importance of opening it up, is I was always aware of being a minority, that I was one of the very few women faculty there, and I kept thinking there are no women here. When I did the Title IX study, one of the things I discovered was the majority of employees at LaSalle University were female. They were secretaries, they were cleaning the bathrooms, they were working in the dorms, and I didn't notice. So it is part of the power of that legislation and of the women's movement to make us notice each other wherever we are. And I think one of you were in camp with Bunny, and I looked to Bunny, and not as my camp buddy, but as my campus counselor. Once she started publishing, this is just one of the many volumes that AAC&U has preserved of all of her work from 1971 until she left, and then we continued on for another 21 years after that. Those came into my office because I was, out feminist. So anything that had the word feminist or sex equity or anything would come to me, and I would cut out the little articles and send one to the counseling center and another to the admissions office, because she was talking about the whole thing changing. And that was her power. And for a young professor still getting her sea legs, one of the things I appreciated most about Bunny was how practical she was. She just gave you a way to get through your day, a way to figure it out. I was just, and the first time I met her at an AAC&U conference, I think it was in '89, AAC&U was celebrating its 75th. And she'd been this like queen of AAC to me. And I went to AAC&U. She was like the only one doing women's stuff at the meeting. So the other challenge she reminded me of, it's one thing to do your work all around, and it's another thing to figure out how you change the very organizations you're part of. And that is certainly one of the challenges within AAC&U we had been working on. I will say we have had not one, not two, but 3 women presidents in a row. And one of my challenges was how to get Bunny's work inside the work of AAC&U. I think this was one of the points of tension, that they hadn't figured out how to make it integral to what AAC&U was taking in other forms to its 700 and now 1,500 members. So that's the sort of challenge I took up after Bunny left, to say, how can I learn? And I had this long talk with her about why she left and some of the tensions. And that was part of the advice, that we were going to figure out a way to be sure this association was always talking about women, whatever it did, and always had a gender equity lens. And I guess I will just end by saying, people talk about her smile, and I was so struck as I began looking at all the pictures of her. She was always smiling. She was smiling no matter who she was talking to. You weren't necessarily her friend, and she's smiling at you. So one of the things that she reminded me that gets you through the struggle when you want to scream is how to somehow find who you are in there and not have them beat you down. And I think in our current, terrible period politically in this country, I am so proud to be among this group of persistent, determined feminists, and know that Bunny would be too, and to know on the day we're celebrating this, it is the same month that Shirley Chisholm was first seated in Congress as the first African-American woman in 1968. On January 3rd, and she ran for president by July 1972 when Title IX was passed. So this is a big movement. It involved everybody. Bunny understood it involved everybody, and she would be really happy to know that Kamala Harris has come out for president, that Elizabeth Warren has put her hat in, and we know that there will be others. So I want to end by thinking about the young people. I just saw the daughter of one of my closest friends at LaSalle. And she said, well, my two daughters, you'll be happy to know, she lives in Iowa. She said, we're in the little blue bubble in Iowa, and she apologized for Grassley and for Keene and for some other people. But she said, my daughters, Elise and Caroline, she said in 7th grade and 10th grade, she said they're so involved in organizations and activities about women's rights, about equity, about immigration and openness and inclusivity and diversity. And this is where we have our power, not just to let them do it while we watch, but to be right in there next to them, to have sharing with them what we've learned, but also learning from them. So I remain very hopeful. I think Bunny would be actually smiling at the potential that we have in this country to turn things around.